Welcome to Hey Therapist. I'm your host, Leslie Ross. With me is my producer, Jay Wesley Lindley. Let's get mental. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hey Therapist. We are back. It's been a little bit of sickness and some icy things, but we are here. We are recording. We are going to get some episodes out today. There was a couple of things that have come up that people ask me about on a regular basis. And one of them is the mind-body connection, right? We read about this all the time where people talk about how their mind and their body are connected, or, if you don't feel good, you're not thinking good. And if you're not thinking good, you're not feeling good, and how those things run simultaneously and they run together. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about because there is very much a connection. If any of you are out there who have maybe dealt with therapy or done some research, you've ran across the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I don't think he's going to get on here and correct me. He might, someone might, that's fine. But it's really it's a hard read. I'm going to tell you, it's a long, hard read. But there's a lot of good information. But, one of the main things in the book it talks about is as long as you are keeping secrets or suppressing information, you're fundamentally at war with yourself. And being able to feel safe with other people is the single most important aspect of mental health. And I've talked about it before, but there's a very big difference in psychological safety and physical safety. You may have gotten out of a situation. You may have removed yourself. You may be in a different headspace. You may be looking at things a lot differently, but you're not psychologically safe because you are still in that fight, flight response. And that's what we talk about when we talk about the attachment and trauma and the development of that hyperactive alarm system, because it molds your body to get stuck in fight or flight. Sometimes you get stuck in freeze, but most of the time when we're talking about trauma responses, we are in that fight or flight. We are in that mindset that something is wrong. I have to do something. Alert, alert, alert. Our body is giving us all of the signs. It's the danger, Will Robbins. Sorry, it's an old quote, but it's still the same principle. Like, you may go into these responses and you may have this feeling that I feel like a little kid when that happens, or I feel like I'm out of control when that happens. And it's because you are. It's because your body somewhere along the way, somewhere with this reaction to this emotion or this trigger, has developed a response. And that response isn't usually healthy. It's not anything that we need. We may have needed it at the time. We may have needed it when it developed. We may be in an abusive situation. We may be dealing with someone who is abusive. We may be living in a home that is abusive. We may be disassociating because we are ourselves being abused. But in present time, with maybe your current friends, family, partners, you don't need to disassociate. But if someone hurts your feelings, or if something gets intense, and you also hear people say, sometimes like, oh my gosh, that certain coworker gives me such a headache, or, just being around that person makes me feel sick to my stomach. That is probably a really true statement. And it's because we try to push our feelings around out of our awareness, but they have to go somewhere, and they go into our bodies. We drive them from our brains into our bodies instead of acknowledging and processing these feelings and understanding these feelings. So we bottle them up. But where do they go? Well, they go into your body. Like I said, they go somewhere. It's not really mysterious aches and pains when we start thinking about it. If we start thinking about it, we can figure out where it's coming from. We want to look at how our body responds to stress. And usually, we have our certain stress and we have our responses to it. And sometimes, stuffing that down, putting it into those dark corners of your brain, repressing it, whatever it is, those feelings are necessary. You may have to keep functioning. You may have to keep going. You may have to keep doing whatever it is you're doing, or you're going to cause harm, or you're going to do something bad, whatever it is. You need to figure out what those patterns are. You need to figure out what those psychosomatic reactions are. I have dealt with clients who have had psychosomatic seizure disorders. So they're having seizures, and we have done all the tests, all the medical. We know it's not a disorder. We know it's not a physical response. We know it's not biological, so it's psychological. So we worked to process out whatever it is after the seizures started. So what has happened that made these seizures start? So let's look at a pinpoint. Let's go back in history. Let's figure out where these are coming from. And you have to kind of identify a moment in time as to when those are coming from. And you'll see if you're watching the video, or if you want to go look at the video, it's it's on the YouTube. I think Spotify has the videos as well. But I'm going to post a couple of diagrams that I have found from some different websites that talk about where we hold our emotions. And most of the time, they're held in the same spots across the board. So if you're having lower back pain, you may be angry. Lower back is a common place to store that anger. And there's, like I said, in the diagrams, you're going to see that. But learning to harness that power of the anger and figure out what to do with it appropriately, constructively, you're going to be able to work on that. Our stomach usually holds fear. It's the emotion that usually goes into our stomach, is that fear, that anxiousness, uneasiness. When you're fearful, or when you don't want to do something, or, whatever it is, if your kiddo is like, "Mommy, my stomach hurts. I'm sick to my stomach." They're like, "You were fine. You haven't eaten anything. There's no reason you should be sick to their stomach." We want to ask why. If we're feeling that nervousness, that fear in our stomach, I call it the emotional belly. It's one of those things where if you're just holding that in there and you feel like you're holding that in, or, if you're a nervous flyer, or you get scared about driving over bridges, or you have these fear of speaking in public, anxiety just kind of sits in that stomach. So we want to recognize that and talk through it and consider what we're going to look at with that. Usually within our heart center, our chest, it's usually pain. It's hurt feelings. It's emotional. It's rejection. When we're feeling that in our chest, grief, we may be talking about just really hurt feelings. We need to feel the grief. We need to feel the hurt. We need to feel the sadness and get rid of that. We don't have to carry that. And sometimes when someone, hurts our feelings, if we have these patterns, if, people have perpetually hurt our feelings and we always feel it in our chest, you may not even recognize that's what's happening. Kind of like with our stomach issues, kind of like with any of these others, our lower back piece. Like, we may not realize what is happening, but we have to figure out how to deal with that. And sometimes it is just mourning through that grief. It's feeling that hurt. It's understanding the, perceived rejection. It may not be rejection. It may be the end of a relationship, but that doesn't mean you're being rejected. That relationship may have needed to end. It doesn't make it hurt any less. It doesn't make it suck any less. So you need to feel that feeling. And if you're not sure what it is, because sometimes things get disconnected and misplaced and we feel things in parts of our bodies, ask the body part, what am I feeling? What are you trying to tell me? And then listen to it. What is it trying to tell you? If we're having headaches a lot, it could be weather related, but it also could be a feeling of loss of control. And that doesn't mean that you are someone who has to be in control all the time. It just may mean that you're having some burnout. You feel like you're in the wrong place in life. You feel like you're struggling to find your place. If you are over controlling and things go the wrong way, you may get headaches. And the tendency to control may exacerbate the issue. So accepting what you can and can't control is really, really important. Like, if you are stressing yourself out, you may be getting a lot of headaches. And that's, a lot of times why they call them tension headaches or stress headaches. It's because you're trying to control something that may not be controllable at the time. It may be something you need to let go and develop those mindfulness and, let it go. Let go of that need to control. If we're feeling issues in our neck or shoulders, that tension, that stress, that strain, you may literally be shouldering too much responsibility. Is a pain in the neck. We'll just use all the puns, but it's fine. You're likely overburdened if that's the case. You may be carrying too much. And instead of asking for help, you may feel like you need to do it all. You may feel like it's your responsibility to take care of this, that, or the other, the family, the work things, whatever it is. You need to learn how to delegate. You need to learn how to ask for help. You need to learn how to share that responsibility, because that's probably what's happening is you're feeling like it's all on you. And that can be really, really stressful. So if you have that knot in your neck, if your shoulders are always high, right now, I'll tell you, take a deep breath and release your shoulders, because we all tend to hunch when we're stressed out, when we're trying to learn it, when we're going through things, when we're, whatever it is, we hunch up those shoulders and we draw our shoulders up to our ears. And that's not where they're supposed to be. Just relax and figure out what that feels like. And if that feels uncomfortable, then you need to figure out what you're trying to control. And not everything we can control. Actually, most things we can't. The only thing you can control is how you respond. And in learning that, it's really important to be able to relax your body and do those things. If you're super, super tired, you may have a little resentment. And I mean super tired, like fatigued, wore out. You may be having a little blame. You may be blaming others. You may be feeling the victim. And fatigue also goes with depression, which goes with all of the thoughts that come from not living in the moment. Like I said, blaming others, playing that victim. You're focusing on who has wronged you, why things are terrible. You're giving power to situations and people that shouldn't be getting power. So try to focus on forgiveness. And, people say, well, you have to forgive the other person to move on. You really don't. You may have to just forgive yourself for feeling the way you do about the situation. You may need to forgive yourself for allowing that person to have that much control and that much passion and that much power in your life. But don't give anyone some free real estate. Let them go on with their life. You want to be having those fulfilling relationships. You want to have relationships that make you happy, that bring you joy. And it may not be all the time, but it should be most of the time. And if we're feeling numbness, we really need to look on working on our trauma. Numbness, disconnected, disassociating, all of those things are trauma responses. It's our body's way of taking ourselves out of situations. When I've dealt with individuals who have been victims of sexual abuse or really any kind of abuse, well, I remember going into a flower garden. I've had, clients. I had one client in particular say that when the abuse was happening, afterwards, and in her mind had changed it to afterwards or during, it didn't really happen. I was actually in a flower garden. And what we realized is they had a poster of a flower garden in their room, or there was a painting on a wall that when the abuse was happening, they would stare at. And in that staring at it, their imagination would take them into that moment. They would be able to disassociate from the pain, from whatever was happening to them, and go into this painting, this poster, this imagery that they had created in their brain. It made it not feel as bad when it was happening. But now they're still sitting at a work meeting, and when it gets too stressful, or if someone is coming at them hot, they're in a flower garden, they're walking in the stream, they're swimming in a lake, whatever it is. And sometimes that can be a good way to relax yourself, but you also need to be present so you can feel what you need to feel and handle things the way that you need to handle. And if you're doing this disassociation stuff, then you're just numbing yourself. You're going to go blank. You're going to have that freeze moment. We're not in fight or flight. We are in freeze. We are disassociating completely. And you may not be able to handle that. If you're having trouble sleeping or having some insomnia, you may be suffering from a loss of self. Sleeplessness is usually associated with that unknown feeling. We're stressing, we're pre-stressing, we're having anxiety about things that haven't even happened yet. We're making up scenarios in our head. And it's really common that can create some insomnia because you have that racing brain. And in those times, it feels unsolvable. Well, it probably is, because there is a lot of, I don't knows. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to react. I don't know how I'm going to feel. And you create scenarios. You go down rabbit holes. You're chasing werewolves. You're doing all of those things instead of focusing on what is happening right now and what might actually happen. Let's stay in reality. And you may not know. You may not know. And that is super stressful, especially if you have that controlling tendencies, especially if you want to be in control of every situation, especially if you want to prepare for every option. But you can't always do that. It's not realistic. We don't know what's going to happen. You're involving other people in your life. We don't know what's going to happen, and we cannot be losing sleep from that. So maybe talking to someone about it, getting that second opinion, talking to your friends and family or a trusted coworker or someone. Well, you may have dealt with this before. You may have dealt with this person. How did they handle things? What have you known to happen? Right now I work for the state of Oklahoma, and there's a lot of changes happening. We don't know. And my staff asks me sometimes, and I deal with it, and I sit in meetings, and my leadership doesn't know, and other people don't know. And it's really stressful to not know what is going to happen within an organization, within your workplace, within any of those things. So it's important to understand your role in that. And sometimes just giving up control can be very soothing. Like, you can make your plans, you can get that resume updated, you can, plan for the future, you can plan for if this relationship ends, what's going to happen. But then you just have to kind of let go of control. You have to just move into that space of whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. And that could be writing it down. Write down your fears, write down your worries, write down the scenarios, and just getting it out of your head a little bit is going to give you some relaxation to be able to rest and not take it so personal. You want to release those feelings, and it could be finding a good therapist. You have to take care of yourself. You want to acknowledge those feelings. You want to get rid of your baggage. You don't want to carry all of that with you. And the emotions you don't deal with, they don't just go away. You're carrying them, and they affect you. They affect how you think, how you feel, how you are in relationships, how you react to others, how you react to situations. All of that stuff we're carrying with us from when we were a kid or when we were growing up is something very real. We have to prepare for what those emotions might be and stop letting it weigh you down. Because when we're having these emotions that are trapped and we've put them into different places in our body, it does weigh you down. We want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of these emotions. We want to get unstuck, essentially. And the book was called The Emotion Code. And it says each trapped emotion resides in a specific location in the body, and they vibrate at their own particular frequency. This may cause you to attract more of that emotion, but you're creating buildup or blockage. So we want to get rid of that blockage. We want to talk about how that develops. And I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again because it's so important to understand. When we have something happen to us, we develop a emotion about it. We develop something in our body. It feels a certain way to us. So we have this feeling about it. And then we have a thought about it. What does this mean to us? What does it mean about me, more specifically? And then that thought and that emotion gets attached to a situation. So this person has hurt my feelings or hurt me physically. I felt this way about it, that I deserved it, that I'm unlovable, that I'm not good enough, whatever it is. And I felt that in my heart center. I felt that in my stomach every time they came around because I was fearful they were going to do that to me again. I feel it in my head. I feel it in my body, whatever it is. And then as we go on through life and situations happen that are similar, that make us feel a certain type of way, then we have this automatic reaction. And we have to unstick that. We have to move on from that because our feelings and our thoughts come from whatever our body is telling us, right? So when we get that anxious feeling, when we get that nervousness, when we, our spidey sensors get to tingling, what does it mean? And it could mean something different for everyone. Most of the time, these emotions are trapped in the same places for most people in general, but it could have came from a different space, right? It may not have come from some sort of a base. It could have came from a car crash that maybe you didn't remember, or you blacked out after and you don't remember who caused it. And even though there may be proof, you still feel like it was your fault. So now we're afraid to drive. We're afraid to drive in certain scenarios. We're afraid to drive in these other things. We're afraid to drive in the rain. Let's say we had a crash and it was in the rain and you don't know if it was your fault. But but cars hydroplane. Someone could have been in your lane and you swerved too much. And you may have played a role in it, but that doesn't mean that it was entirely your fault, but we take that on. So now every time it rains, we don't want to drive because we're afraid of driving in the rain because of something that happened before. We forget that we've driven in the rain 100,000 other times and nothing has ever happened because now this is stuck. And we have to unstick that. We have to have faith in ourselves and remember that this isn't a real emotion. This isn't present. A bad thing happened and now we're moving forward. So we want to get rid of those things. We want to get rid of what is stuck because it can lead to resentment. It can lead to poor decision making. We're making decisions in present time off of things that have happened in the past. We may be self-sabotaging. We may be overreacting. We may have that depression, that fatigue. And so we have to figure out where that is coming from. And we have to talk about where, it came from and how do we get rid of it. And if you're feeling like a little kid when you're having big emotions, then it probably came from a time that you were a little kid. And our stress that's releasing all of this cortisol, which is part of our fight, flight, freeze response, it can show damage. Now, the brain is really pretty resilient. Unless you've had like a true TBI, a traumatic brain injury, something that has changed the shape or function or deadened part of your brain, then the brain is actually really, really resilient. And you can build new neural pathways or you can restore old ones. So we have to talk about how to change that. And we have to talk about what that feels like in your body. If we're having that tightness during an anxious day, or it feels really good to stretch your hips out after, a long day, that stretching. We have mapped those emotions into our body and we have to learn how to get rid of that. Somatic yoga has become very, very popular recently. And it's because more and more people are understanding that you have these emotions trapped in your body and we need to get rid of them. Because, when you're feeling happy, you feel that everywhere. You feel it all over your body. Things that were hurting don't hurt anymore. We're feeling it all over our body. But when we get mad, it's in that upper part of our body. We're feeling it just all in that top part. Our chest is tightened. Our ears are ringing. Our hands may be tingling. We want to get rid of the way we're feeling. When we feel loved, we feel it all over our body. Most of the time, it's just this overwhelming, you hear people say, the love washed over me. It took over my body. And it's because it does, because that's how we feel it. We feel it all over our body. So it's really important to understand where you're feeling things and what they mean to you. And they do categorize feelings into 5 groups. We have our negative feelings. That's like the stress, the anger, the shame. Our positive feelings, our happiness, our love, and our pride. Those cognitive feelings, which gives us our attention and our perception. And then just homeostatic states. We feel balanced. It's that neutral state that I talk about. We want to get to that neutral state. We have regulated internal emotions. We have regulated external display of those emotions. And then sometimes we are truly sick and we have that illness, and we have somatic states where we truly are sick, and we feel that differently in our body depending on what you're feeling. Right now there's so much going around. There's flu, there's COVID, there's different type of viruses. So some people are having headaches and stomach issues, and some people are having full body emotional responses. And if you're maybe starting to get sick or you feel like you're getting sick, but there's also something stressful going on in your life, there's something stressful going on in your relationship, you're having a breakup, you have a grief response, and you're feeling this all over fatigue, well, we may not know what it is right in that moment, because it could be 2 things. It could be the grief response and you might have the flu. So it's important to get all of the things checked out. And that's why we have to worry about what's going on in our body and how to regulate that. One of the things we can do is work on our posture. Work on those gestures. If you notice yourself sitting all tensed up at your office chair, stand up, roll your shoulders back a little bit. Stretch that neck out. Take some good, solid, deep breaths. Be in that present moment. You want to be able to release those emotions from your body. Sometimes you need to cry. You may not be in a space where you can cry. So you may have to push it back. And then by the time you get somewhere that you can cry, you may not have that overwhelming feeling to cry. Find something that makes you cry. Find a song, the part of a movie, the end of a show, whatever it is that you know always makes you cry, and let yourself cry. And when you start to cry, you're going to feel these other emotions come up. Let them come up. We feel them. We don't have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and soldier on or whatever the crap people say. Feel your feelings. It may not be the appropriate time in the moment, but go home, go to your safe space, go to wherever it is and feel those feelings. And when you're done being sad, when you're done screaming into the ether, then let's change it into something positive. Turn on some music that you love. There was I can't remember which series it was. I think it was Ally McBeal or something, where they would like dance it out. They would always say, let's dance it out. And they may be upset about something, but they would turn on music that they loved and reluctantly start dancing. And then it changed the emotion. It changed into something positive. And they would just be dancing and laughing, and you feel better. And that's what you want to find, is whatever it is that makes you feel better, because we don't want to be repressing these emotions, because they can cause long-term sickness. If you repress your emotions long enough and they sit in a certain part of your body, it can create long-term sickness. So we need to acknowledge those feelings. What are we feeling? We want to connect and understand to what is actually happening. We don't want to repress them. We don't want to just keep pushing them down. We want to settle. We want to feel the feeling, but we want to move through it. And some of the things we carry for years and years and years, but that doesn't mean that you have to continue to carry them. When we're a kiddo and things happen, we tend to be someone who blames ourselves for everything, or they may blame others for everything. You may withdraw from social activities. You may not want to be made fun of, but we have to deal with that. There's also a big movement now called shadow work. Shadow work is essentially trauma-based things, but maybe not with the therapist, maybe with a therapist. There are some therapists that embrace this. Anything can be called shadow work when we're talking about exploring our childhood. That's what we call shadow work. It looks at another lens to explore those sides of ourselves that we don't normally show. And that's why it's called shadow work, is because it's the things we keep in the shadows. Oh, wait, I think that's a TV show now or something like that. Anyway, it's that part of ourselves we try to hide. And if you grew up where when you're feeling emotions, someone told you to stop it, you may do that to yourself. I hate it when people apologize for crying. They'll start crying about something like, I'm so sorry. Why are you apologizing for feeling a feeling? Like, it's appropriate to feel appropriate feelings. So you don't have to apologize for that. You don't have to downplay your emotion. And you can do a lot of things with a therapist if you have a therapist, but sometimes you don't have that. So we want to work on looking at those parts of yourselves you do keep in your shadow. And it may be giving it a different name. It may just be looking at yourself in a mirror, kind of the magic mirror where you're seeing yourself, but you're not seeing what is happening in the present moment. You're looking back into those shadow pieces of yourself. And you want to explore the parts of yourself that you don't really like. Let's talk about why you don't like them. Do you truly not like them, or do you not like them because someone else in your life, somewhere along the line, has told you it's not okay? I am very childlike, and I love people who can embrace the childlike side of themselves. I want to enjoy things just unfiltered. I want to go and do things. I want to go to the carnivals. I want to eat the cotton candy. I want to get excited about fireworks. I want to do all of those things. And I have had people in my life, they're like, oh my God, you're so ridiculous. I'm like, yes, but you know what I'm doing? I am enjoying myself. Enjoy those little things, because that's really what matters. And if you have someone who may have not had the opportunity to enjoy little things in life, who may have been embarrassed by their childlike self, be a kid, go run in the grass. That can be very freeing. Go outside, take your shoes off, and put your feet in the grass and feel what that feels like. Get a blanket and lay down and stare at the sky. Enjoy the little things. Explore, rediscover that part of yourself that you may keep hidden. Rediscover your ridiculousness is what I tell people a lot of time. Like, be ridiculous. Enjoy yourself. Be weird. And the people around you will either get on board or they won't. But most of the time when they see you being weird and they see you enjoying themselves, you may be giving someone permission to enjoy themselves. You may be giving them the permission to have fun and be silly and laugh at ridiculous things. Maybe they didn't have that. I talked a little about the somatic exercises, yoga, stretching, doing some shaking yourselves out, belly breathing exercises. All of these are somatic exercises that can help you get into your body and figure out, why am I having tension in that hip? Why is my back hurting? Lay down and start stretching. Ask your back why it's hurting. And it sounds ridiculous. I know it sounds ridiculous. But if you're having this feeling, you're like, I don't even know why this is hurting. Maybe you got out of your car and grabbed your backpack and pulled your back, because I did that last week. The struggle is real. Maybe you're just having this tension and you really do not know where it is. Lay down and stretch it out. Ask your body why it's feeling that way and listen to the responses. It may not make sense, but listen to it. What does this mean? Back. What are you trying to tell me? And it may be that you need to let go. Okay. Let go of what? Let go of control. Let go of the pain. Let go of the fear. Let go of the past. Whatever it is, listen to your body and move forward with that. And sometimes you just need to be still. We need to meditate. We need to understand what is happening. We need to practice that stillness. We need to understand what breathing exercises are truly for. Again, sit in nature. Go outside. Even if you have some music on, do it outside. Do it on your porch. Do it in the yard. Even just sitting in your car with the windows down, the air coming through. Feel what it feels like. We've had some really cold temperatures and we got a lot of snow for Southeast Oklahoma. We don't usually get that much snow. And I love to ski. I don't like being cold, but I like being in the snow. I enjoy the snow for when I can enjoy the snow. And there was something about just crunching that snow beneath my feet and feeling that cold air on my face. It just felt really good. So sometimes it really is about being in that moment. We watch our pets go lay in their sunny spots and we're like, oh my gosh, why are they laying in the sun? But sometimes if you just stop and stand and feel the sun on your face, on your body, on your skin, don't get sunburned, wear your sunscreen, all the things we need to do, but feel the sun on your face, feel how good that feels and be present in that moment. And sometimes if we can just change the regulation of our body, when we get in those heightened state, we need to do something that changes the way our body is feeling. Stand in the sun, feel the cold on your face, put some cold on your neck, whatever it is to get yourself out of that. And we want to understand how to make ourselves feel better and what we can do to relax. And that's going to be something that you figure out is, what do I need to do to relax? And you may not know, because you may have lived in this heightened state for so very long, but figure it out. And it may be something as easy as dancing it out. Just scream into the nothingness, scream into a pillow, sing your song really, really loud, just ridiculously loud. And then your brain's going to be like, wait, what are we doing? What was happening there? And then you're going to start enjoying yourself, or you're going to realize how ridiculous it feels. And you're going to be able to move through that emotion. But we don't want to repress emotions. And if you know there is something you're holding on to, why? Why are you holding on to it? And you may say, well, because to protect myself, because I don't want it to happen again. Okay, cool. But why is it going to happen again? Because now you have different knowledge. And that's another thing we need to recognize is a lot of things happen to us, around us, with us, because of us. But the reality is we're acting with the knowledge we have. We're acting with the beliefs we know unto that point. Now, if the same thing keeps happening to you over and over and over and over and over, and you're not changing how you respond, you're not changing how you react in those situations, then yeah, that's on you. You need to work on that. But if you're saying this happened to me and I have, disclosed I was in a terribly abusive relationship and I was never in another one. Now, I have been in relationships where someone may not have treated me the way they needed to be treating me. And I stayed longer because I wanted to see if we could go back to that point or I wanted it to change. So I worked to try to change that behavior. But when it didn't change, I didn't stay. I was the person that said I would never be in an abusive relationship. And then I was. But I can promise you I will never again because I know what that feels like. So it's about that growth. It's about that change. It's about learning about yourself, what you need to learn about yourself, about situations. Because at the time that I was in that, I had different beliefs. I believed I needed to stay because I didn't want another failed relationship. I believed that this person was going to change. I believed they could be the person that they were when I met them. None of that was true. The person that they were when they were being abusive is the person that they are now. And you have to ask yourself, is this where I want to be? Is this how I want to live my life? If they do not change, if they are not putting in the work, and one of the things I tell my staff, one of the things we learn in the mental health world is we don't work harder than the client. And that goes to relationships, that goes to family, friends, whatever. We don't work harder than the other person. If both people are working to change, if it's a relationship issue, if it's a family issue, if we're trying to rebuild some friendship, whatever it is, if you're working harder than the other person, why? Why are you working so hard? You have to accept a situation for what the situation is. If nothing ever changes, is this what I want for my life? If nothing ever changes, is this a relationship I want to be in? If nothing ever changes, I had someone say the other day, complacency and happiness can sometimes be interchangeable. And that's true. Maybe you're there and it's fine. And you're like, yeah, I could do this. This is fine. And if that's what you want to do with your life, cool. Like, I don't really understand it, but okay. You may think, you know what? It's easier to stay in this one as the devil I know. And it's fine. It's not terrible. We're not fighting. We get along, but is it where I want to be? I don't know. But it's good for now, and that's okay too. But also, what are you doing? What are you doing? Is this where you want to be for the rest of your life? And that's where we have to figure that out. And it may be feeling those feelings of disappointment. And you may be disappointed in yourself because you stayed. You may be disappointed in the other person because they changed. You may be disappointed in your workplace because now there's new leadership, there's new policies, and you don't like it anymore, but you love your job, but you don't like your workplace. Is there somewhere else you could do that job that may fit you better? Really, it's about feeling your feelings when you feel them. We want to get away from repressing those emotions. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to be angry. We just don't live there. So you have to figure out how to feel your feelings in appropriate ways, in the appropriate settings, and move forward, because we don't need to carry stuff with us. Because again, when you're carrying your past with you, you are bringing that into everything. And we need to carry our past knowledge. We need to carry information that we've learned. That's what we need to carry from our past. But we don't need to carry emotions that are unresolved. We don't need to carry unresolved trauma. We don't need to carry these fears because something bad has happened in the past. Yes, but is it going to happen again? And what can you do to control that? What can you do to change the way you react and respond? And that's what I want people to take away from this is, how am I responding, reacting, feeling, and what's appropriate in that? And how do I change it? Where do I find my joy? Where do I find my happiness? Where do I find my relaxation? Figure that out and utilize that every day if you need to. Once a week, if that's all you really feel like you can fit in. Once a month. Anything that you can do to go through the emotions of the day, of the week, of the month, journaling, all of those things. Figure out how you can not store that in your body, because it really will.
For my producer, Jay Lindley, I'm Leslie Ross. Thank you all for joining us.
And that's what we want to avoid. We want to have that mind-body connection to where we understand. I've been carrying these stressors so long that now I truly have back issues.
They may be featured on the show.
I've been carrying this for so long now I truly have some cardiovascular things that I have to deal with.
And is for your entertainment purposes only. Thank you for joining us. Make good choices.
We want to stay healthy and happy the best we can, mind, body, and soul.